I'm just waiting for a 6 o'clock text.
Yeah, I know. Good evening and welcome to the May 8th meeting of the Richmond Community Schools Board of School Trustees. As is our custom, if you would all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Also, we generally at the beginning of every meeting recite our mission and vision statement. And I don't know who has which one, but mission statement, Brad?
Richmond Community Schools guides students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
And our vision.
Richmond Community Schools, a community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for lives of choice, purpose, and service.
Very good. As it generally is on a work session meeting, we have one opportunity for public commentary. I want to remind everyone of the standards for public commentary, just for reminder's sake. The Board of School Trustees recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on corporation matters in the Board of School Trustees bylaws. The board wants to ensure that the public feels welcome and that the concerns are answered in a timely and efficient manner. The following protocol has been established. This protocol applies to other public participation as well, such as email, which is considered public expression. The board has set aside this meeting is one 30-minute period for public commentary during each board meeting. Persons who wish to address the Board of School Trustees may reserve a time on any board meeting agenda under public comment by calling the superintendent's office by 4:30 of the business day preceding the meeting or registering at the evening of the event. Maximum time for individual speakers is 5 minutes per person. The board expects personal decorum and factual information from the speaker. The president reserves the right to interrupt the speaker when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or if it interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Speakers voicing a complaint may be advised to complete a written form and submit it for review per policy 8130, which is public complaints and concerns. Comments recognizing the work of staff and students are always welcome. However, critical remarks concerning specific school personnel or students are to be made through the complaint process available in policy 8130. If the public comment reflects inaccurate or incomplete information, the superintendent may clarify the facts after the public comment section. If more investigation is needed, the comment will be clarified at the next meeting. If the issue is a personal issue and or not of general interest to the public participant will receive a personal follow-up within the week. Public comments requiring no research, investigation, or review may receive a response from the board and or administration as appropriate, but generally we do not respond to public comments at the time. That's just a reminder. We are pleased to have people here. We don't always have this, so I appreciate it. Do we have people signed up?
Yes, we have 4.
Okay.
Corey Davidson.
If you would introduce yourself, and then Mrs. O'Brien will be our timekeeper.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Corey Davidson. I have lived in Richmond my whole life. I have went to Vale, Hibbard, the high school here. I have a 9-year-old that is autistic. He also has a sensory processing disorder. In saying that, he has an IEP in school at Crestdale. This year, with the change of the districts, you're taking my 9-year-old that has showed so much progress throughout his school years, 6 years at this school particularly, to go to Star. Again, I live on South 7th and B Street, and I'm going to be sending my son to Star. So I asked for a waiver, if you would, to let him stay there, you know, his last year. I wanted to move away this year didn't do it, wanted to stay his last year, because change for any kid is hard. Change for kids with autism is extremely hard. You know, they need structure. They need that stability for progress. My fear is we send him to another school that he's not familiar with, and of course I'll do my best to make him as familiar as I can. However, to make him go to another school where he doesn't know anybody. He's socially awkward. He doesn't have any friends. He has one friend at Crestdale that he can really call his friend, okay? Going to Star, I don't know. I know a lot of kids in our neighborhood, they're changing too. I get that, but those aren't my son's friends. I just feel and then I've called Crestdale, I called the principal, asked for a waiver, called special needs, Mrs. Summit. Absolutely nothing they can do. So I called this office. Again, absolutely nothing we can do. Now I know for a fact that Charles had said, we're going to send our students to, let's say, Fairview, only to call those parents back and say, no, your son or daughter will be able to stay at Charles. I'm not sure why that is. Again, I care about all the children. I want all the children to succeed and to do well. My most, number one concern, of course, is my son. And so I find it unfair that we're not even looking into children that have IEPs in place, that are progressing instead of, regressing. So I hope that's not the case with my son. He's very smart, he's very intelligent. And like I said, I'll do my best, but I just find it unfair that I can't speak to someone and that would show me empathy for my child and his needs. It's not my needs. It's really his needs to progress and to become an independent adult. That's my goal for my child. And we're familiar, comfortable. We just had his IEP not even 2 weeks ago. I was not told of this change. So yeah, that's really why I came, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Lucinda Wright.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Lucinda Wright, and I am the president of the Board of Townsend Community Center and also a volunteer for the Townsend Community Center Harambe After School Program, which is held at Star Elementary School. I'll say I'm extremely disappointed in this redistricting. My question to this board is, you hired a consultant out of state who's not familiar with Richmond and the people of Richmond. That was money that could have been used to be invested in our children by giving teachers raises and hiring additional teachers. To take, and I'm going to preference our children at Star, to take our children out of Star, who a lot of our children are in survival mode. You remove them and put them elsewhere. The children north of Northeast Street railroad tracks historically have been affected by the closing of Warner School, Nicholson School, Pleasant View, Glen Hills, Highland Heights. They were, 3 years ago, they were taken out of Crestdale, put in Star, and then now they're going back to Crestdale. That disrupts the learning process of our children. You say you care about our children verbally. Actions speak louder than words. And I think it is a sin and a shame to disrupt all of these children, be they at Star, Vale, Charles, wherever, to disrupt that learning process, because what then happens, they're accustomed to learning in a particular environment, and then you take them out of that environment, and I apologize for talking with my hands, you take them out of that environment and put them in another environment, then they begin to act out. Then they're labeled as a troubled child, and that label sticks with them throughout the school. So I think if you had talked with the parents, the teachers, and those, and especially those who are being affected, the children, I think we would have had a better outcome. And I'm praying that this is not, that this redistricting that you all are doing is not written in stone. Because I think there needs to be a little bit more thinking and a little bit more talking with everybody involved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ben Quinn.
Hi, my name is Ben Quinn, and I'm here on behalf of the Hibbard Building and to talk about how beneficial that program really is to prepare kids for the high school. I went to Hibbard my 5th, 6th, and 7th grade year, and 8th grade year, and now I'm a freshman at the high school. Some of the skills that I learned there were accountability and hard work, and that's pretty much due to the hard work of the teachers who work there and how much they really put into the assignments we do. At that building, we are held accountable for lots of group work and projects that if they're not done on time, you really have to deal with those repercussions. And since going into high school, I've realized the skills that I was taught there really have helped me flourish there. I'm actually ranked 4th in the class and working towards becoming one of the chief editors of the yearbook. So I really have noticed that the writing skills I learned there and the accountability skills I learned there have helped me achieve really nice things at the high school. And I think that without going to that program and without learning those skills from the great staff that works there, I would not have been able to be as successful as I am now. And so to kind of discuss the fact that we should better showcase what is happening at the building, the staff at Hibbard has actually put together something called Hibbard Happenings, just to talk about some of the things they are doing there to help out with preparing kids to come to the high school and really showcase how well they can work. And so it kind of just covers some of the different things that are happening there and how well the kids are performing. Sure. Thank you.
Ben.
Sorry, I missed my cue. He's the better speaker. Thank you, sir. We'll try to bring you one of these
Thank
at
you,
one
sir.
of your meetings each month.
Thank you so much.
Wendy Knight.
Hi, I'm here tonight to talk about a situation that some of you may or may not know. As recently as this past Friday, our double-ed coach was asked to resign. This came as a complete and utter shock to the entire team, to the parents. We've walked away from this like, what in the world could she possibly have done? I'd like to read an email that I had sent. Mr. Terrell, I don't know if you received my email or not, so I'm just going to read it. I just put, good afternoon. I'm a very proud double-ed parent that's extremely disappointed with the high school administration and the actions with our coach, Michelle Myers. Michelle was unexpectedly asked to resign on May 4th. Prior to the resignation, there were no complaints communicated to the team. We have talked with Mrs. Wolpe, but we're left with the feeling that she was just pacifying us. There have been many conflicting comments that have been made. We understand that there were some girls and possibly a parent that went to her with some valid complaints, as is going to happen with anytime you get with a group of girls. Let's face it, girls are mean. I mean, they just are. Okay. They went to her with complaints. This is not the feeling, opinion, or the overall dynamic of the team. Mrs. Wolpe met with the team later Monday afternoon and our girls had things they wanted to say and for them to be heard. Mrs. Wolpe didn't really give them an opportunity to speak. She allowed a few questions, but while speaking, one girl was told, "I'm going to have to ask you to stop talking." That was very disrespectful to the girls. Mrs. Wolpe gave those students that came to her with their complaints the opportunity to communicate those to her, but did not allow the girls that wanted to defend Michelle the same courtesy. This year has been a very difficult year for the group. It was sort of a rebuilding year. We lost a lot of strong seniors last year. So emotions ran very high, particularly for those upperclassmen. There was a lot of teenage drama. Again, that's what happens when you get girls together. And Michelle does not stand for that behavior and has had many conversations with the girls about that very subject. She will and has pulled a girl from a performance for doing just that. The team moving forward for 2018-19 is a very tight group of girls that work amazingly together. These girls are devastated for the mere fact that they had no idea what Michelle could have done. This team is together every day of the year, not just basketball or football season, but every day, in class, in practices, in performances. This group of girls have more dedication, drive, and heart than any other group at Richmond High School because of Michelle. I hope that the team's feelings somewhere along the way are heard and considered. Those that have chosen not to be a part of the team going forward did just that. They chose to leave. At this point, it's kind of a she said type of situation, but not everybody is being heard. Several of us parents have emailed Mrs. Wolpe. We feel that all we've kind of gotten is a copy and paste response back from her. We are all communicating together, and we're all comparing because we want to know what happened. The girls, I mean, my daughter is here, Kaylee's here, Chrissy's here, her daughter couldn't be here. But these girls want Michelle back. So whoever the girl, they don't know who could have possibly have done these complaints. And they feel like the high school administration doesn't care whether there's a Dovelet team or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carrie Arnold.
Hi, my name's Carrie Arnold. I have a 9-year-old daughter, Autumn, who attends Charles Elementary. Autumn hasn't been at Charles except for 2 years, simply because she started off with 2 years of preschool through Richmond Head Start. I knew that there were problems with her, but moving on to kindergarten, she had to be retained. When she was retained in kindergarten, she carried on to the 1st grade, but when she was in the 1st grade, all this was at Seton. When she was there, they said they do not have something for special ed kids, which she obviously needed to be tested for. So when I moved her to Charles, she was assigned to Mrs. Pearson as her teacher. And she started off in her 1st grade when she was tested. Sorry, I'm nervous. But when she was tested, she was at the grade reading level and other levels for everything else as the 1st month of kindergarten. After all of her preschool, after all of her, kindergarten years and everything, that's where she was at. But when she started Charles, that's where my daughter started to shine. They have done so much for her. She is where she is now because she has an amazing teacher and an amazing school system. And this is the first time in all of these years that she's had this. The first time. Now she's grade level. She is accelerating. She is exactly where she needs to be and above. So it's not only, that Mrs. Pearson is a complete blessing to my family because now I don't worry about my daughter. I know that she's going to do great because she's proud of herself now, where she before felt so terrible. She knew there was something wrong in all of these other teachers, for the 2 years at preschool. Mrs. Pearson was teacher number 6. And she was the first one to be able to just make it click for Autumn. She has an IEP, but there have been no changes now because she's doing so well that it's almost as if she doesn't need one because they know Autumn. They know how she works, they know how her mind works, they know how to work with her in a way that brings her above what drowned her. And my attention wants to be put towards these children that have these special needs. She may not seem like it to a new school, because, you know, and then that's when she's going to start sinking because they know how my daughter works. They knew what it took to get her to this point because so many others have tried and they couldn't do it. And I have bragged and just congratulated the blessings that I have found in this school. And it's not just Charles. I am sure that other parents in all of these other schools that are shifting these children around are finding the same things because everybody has something that suits them. Whereas you might like Nikes, I like Skechers, you know, but neither one are better than each other, but they work for you, whereas they may not work for somebody else. So I want to put a lot of attention to these children that have these IEPs that really depend on what they have now. So if it comes down to a fact that we can't disrupt the entire changing of these boundaries because you have things set in stone for certain purposes that I understand were set in stone for reason, but please consider that the children with IEPs and special needs not be removed, or the autistic children that have special needs, the people that already know these children and how they work and have devoted their time into building these children into the great children that they have achieved and mastered to this point. Don't make them start over with somebody else to have to relearn these children. They need that. They need to continue to strive. Thank you.
Heather Kendall.
Hi, I'm Heather Kendall. I have a son currently at Charles. I also have one at Test, and I have a almost two-year-old. We are in the process of purchasing a house. We have looked for months, and I am very picky to the school that I want my children at. We put in an offer on a Thursday because, to my understanding, that house was Charles. Monday, that house is no longer Charles, and that throws my son out of loops because he has been at Charles since preschool and on the verge of high ability. So he doesn't have an IEP. But my son is going to be inducted in the National Elementary Honor Society next week. And because he's going to be at our new location, the house is Crestdale, he loses out on these opportunities. Why? It makes no sense where our new house is going to be to drive past Charles and past Test to take him to Crestdale. It doesn't make sense. I looked it up on my map several different ways. It adds 15 minutes drive, round trip, taking my kids to school. They don't ride buses. I drive them. Had they had to ride a bus, they would probably have to get on the bus at 6:30 in the morning just to go everywhere they need to be over there. So I'm not understanding why my child has to miss out on an opportunity like National Honor Society or clubs that he's been a part of, or the fact that these teachers are taking such good care of him with his high ability. He's tested several times and he barely misses it. Otherwise, he'd be at the Hibbard Building in Logos. I feel that moving the lines, because my new house is right above 40, the line behind Best Buy and Kohl's across from the Arboretum. And that takes my property value that might have been here to here now. Because when you find out that it's in Crestdale, nobody's going to want to buy your house as much as they want to buy your house when it's in Charles, which is why we looked for so long to find a house in Charles. Our next option would have been Westview, because I want my son in a school that thrives. And I don't feel that he's going to get these opportunities and be able to thrive at this school. I've moved a couple different times in the 10 years that my kids have been through the schools, and every time I make sure that I pay the higher rent, that I pay the higher, I'm going to be paying higher property taxes to live in Charles District. Like I said, my son has been there since preschool. Will there be any exceptions? He has 1 year left. Can he finish out at Charles before going to test? I'm just really upset that my son's gonna have to miss out on these opportunities. And, my oldest has an IEP, and I know this is way off subject, but, they say that your child changes when you go to different schools, different things. When my older son was in 5th grade, it was horrible his first year there at Test, and his IEP was not followed and taken care of the way it was. So I back these moms that say that their children need these IEPs and these teachers. And I was a former employee of Charles, and I praise them. They are awesome. So please just think about that when you're making these boundary lines and passing these, and the money that it's going to cost busing these kids from the east side of town all the way to the west side of town. It just doesn't make sense to us as parents. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your participation. And I'm sure you'll be hearing more. All right. We need to move to our consent items.
Okay, our consent items for your consideration this evening are 3.01, the approval of minutes, 3.02, human resources, including the addendum which is at your desk this evening, and then 3.03, grants.
Okay. Do you have a motion to accept the consent items as presented?
I'll make that motion,
Motion
please.
from Debbie, second.
I'll second.
Second by Jeff Slifer. Any comments or questions on those items? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the consent items signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Action items, including an update to field trips.
All right, our first action item this evening is 4.01, and that is the revision of the Exhibit D with student transit. I'm going to ask Mr. Tidrow if he would speak to this, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Terrell. Karen Scalf, our Chief Financial Officer, could not be here today. She's at an IASBO conference, so I'm filling in for her on this. Attached is the revised Exhibit D to the 2017-2019 agreement with Student Transit LLC. This exhibit replaces the previous Exhibit D. The exhibit details the pricing structure for trips outside of the routine transport of students to and from school. The pricing goes into effect with the passage of this exhibit and will be retroactive to trips taken after January 1st, 2018. Recommendation that the Board of School Trustees approves the revised Exhibit D to the 2017-2019 agreement with Student Transit LLC for transportation services as presented.
Do I have a motion to accept the changes as presented? Motion by Dixie Robinson. Do I have a second? Second by Brad. Any comments or questions?
Is it always normal for the late cancellation fee to be that price?
This would be a new price.
It's a new price. Was there a price before?
I do not think so.
Yeah, there was.
Was there one?
3 hour.
Why is there an increase?
It's not an increase. It's actually a decrease.
I'm confused.
That's only for trips canceled without 24
Yeah,
hours
that's
notice.
canceled.
And we also would pay so much per hour and then pay so much per mileage.
Which is a better deal for us
It's a
right
better
now.
deal for
Is that,
Richmond Community Schools.
is that a leased bus? Is that what that is?
Bus. It's our bus.
We're paying the
Yeah,
staff for that.
Correct. So here's an example of it. For instance, a trip to Centerville, which is 16 miles round trip for a half day. previously would have cost us $150. Now it's gonna cost us $86. So the restructuring that is in this is helping us, is going to be more efficient for us financially than the way it was written.
Okay, thank you.
Might clarify too that it's not additional money, it's money from the contract that is designated toward field trips. So it's really designed to be able to get more field trips for the money that's allocated, basically, so that the price per trip will be less than it was last year.
Okay.
And schools will be able to do more trips.
All right, thank you.
Since this is retroactive, and I don't need it today, but I'd like to know the adjustment from January 1 to today, what that number is.
Well, I guess I have another question then. If this was something that has already been in place prior to us voting on it,
It's not already in place.
This would be retroactive.
It'll be
if
retroactive.
approved,
so it'll pick up from January?
January 1st, 2018. So.
Okay.
But once it's approved, if it's not approved, we won't go back and, there'll be no adjustment. If we do, it'll go back and actually save us money from what it cost
Okay.
us before.
And it's unusual to have a contract adapted to be less costly than more costly, but it's because of a change that was made last year that, once it was applied, it didn't really make any sense. So we're sort of correcting that from last year.
Thank you.
I don't know if you slipped or not, but you said something about a 3-hour cancellation.
Last year, it used to be a 3-hour minimum.
So it's changed from a 3-hour to a 24-hour minimum.
I mean, the charge was actually a 3-hour, because the drivers are paid 3-hour minimum, whether there's a
Okay.
cancellation
I
or not.
misunderstood what you
Yeah,
said
that was,
there. Okay.
that was a miscue on
Good
my part.
clarification.
Good point, thank you. Anything else? All those in favor of adjusting the Exhibit D as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
All right, our next action item this evening is 4.02. That is the 2018-19 revised calendar and the 2019-2020 calendar for the school year. And I'm going to ask Mrs. O'Brien if she would speak to this, please.
Thank you. The first calendar is a revision to the 2018-19 calendar that was previously approved. And then the addition of the 19-20, which mirrors the 18-19 calendar. Just to highlight a few changes to the calendar. The start date and fall break, Christmas break, or winter break, spring break are the same format. There's no real changes there. The changes include 2 built-in e-learning days, one on Parent-Teacher Conference Day, one on one of the teacher professional development days, and that adjustment puts the ending time for the students' last day of school prior to Memorial Weekend. So we don't have that like one extra day after the Memorial Day weekend. The calendar adjustment also includes the addition of the possibility of an e-learning day on a snow day. This year, we had the days built in, or we revised the calendar to have the e-learning days on a Saturday. The recommendation next year is that the e-learning day would occur on an actual day that school is canceled. The other change is with the end of school being before Memorial Weekend, also the recommendation to move graduation up a week on both of those calendars.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the calendar as presented?
All motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dixie. Comments or questions? Actually, I might have one real quick too. Jennifer, could you talk about the process, like how this came about a little bit more? The calendar committee, I know, and then discussion, just kind of where the teachers are with this?
Yeah, we talked about it before we did a draft of the revision of the calendar. We talked to the teachers just about the e-learning days, how it was going. And so they felt that they were ready to have an e-learning day on the actual day school was canceled. There was some desire to not have that, just to have finals and things, and then have Memorial Weekend and then have to come back for one day. It was hard to schedule finals and just for that one extra day. So that was the other desire, is to try to pull that back so school could end before Memorial Weekend. And also to have graduation a little bit earlier. So those were all feedback that we got from teachers, and we took that into consideration, came up with a draft. We brought it back and talked to the teachers about it again before presenting it to you here tonight.
At discussion,
At
correct?
yes, a discussion.
And e-learning days were also discussed at the building level. Many of the buildings talked about it. and
Oh, they did, okay.
So they turned into.
Brad?
Can you give us, I know you can't give us specific classes or anything, but can you give us kind of an example of what that first e-learning day of second semester is going to look like? Because looking at it from the outside here, that's going to be the first day of when students should be there. And, how are you going to conduct classroom activities on the first day of a semester through e-learning?
And we talked about that with the teachers, and it would be the same as if you were in class. It would be some getting to know you activities. It might be a pre-assessment. It would be the same type of activities that they would be doing if they were in class.
Can you talk to how many classes may be impacted? Maybe Chuck?
That it would actually be their first meeting day?
Yeah, really, we have the 5th grade elective rotation at the intermediates would be affected. The 6th, 7th, and 8th grade are on 12-week rotation, so they can, that won't be a first day after class for them. And then the high school, any singletons class, just off the top of my head, maybe forensic, the 1 semester course, forensics, zoology. I mean, those are 1 semester courses, so that could be the first day. For the most part, most of the classes are linked together. They're not always, but we do our best they do their best to try to have the same English 10 teacher, first semester, second semester. So I really think it'll be minimal. That first day would be, the actual e-learning day would be minimal, and for the most part, the high school.
They do switch teachers though often when the classes carry through, just from personal experience.
Jeffrey?
I really struggle with this for 2 reasons. I mean, because of board responsibility, but also because this is being driven by the teachers and administrators, and it's almost feel like this shouldn't be a position that, out of some of the subjects you tell that we shouldn't be involved with, I'm thinking this is almost one of those.
Yeah, let's go that way.
But at the same time, I'm not as high on the kite or with the kite as you guys have been about our 3 e-learning days that we've had this year. I find it, I'm a little concerned that now we're building into, and maybe you can help me, maybe my thought's wrong here, but we have our teachers under contract for 186 days. Because we added that extra professional development day a couple of years ago. And we bank on our students going to school for 180 days. Now we build in 2 e-learning days, so in a sense, we've got 178 learning days with the 2 e-learning days. And now we're going to throw in more e-learning days with the potential snow days or school, which I think is great. I think I can roll with that. I'm thinking that makes sense. School's canceled. Let's open up the laptops. Let's have school at home, and we're almost approaching a college-style class for K through 12. But my concern is we're cheating our kids because I've not yet seen a structure. I sent you an email asking you about rules, accountability, structure, how, and your response was, well, it's like any other day. But from my past experience with these past 3 e-learning days, that is so far from the truth. So, and I'm not calling you a liar, but what I'm saying
Do you
is
have
my
examples of
perception.
that?
Well, my perception is, the e-learning days that were added to the calendar this year for snow makeup days, we ended up with 3 of those.
Correct.
And the teachers were charged with putting some kind of a project or some kind of a lesson or something on Canvas. And then the teachers were supposed to keep track of attendance, and which I'm sure they did. And so they had to assign 4 hours of classroom, or the teachers had to be available for 4 hours, and that 4 hours could have been any night through the week. It could have been after school any day. I mean, it wasn't really assigned to that day, in my opinion. It really was. I mean, they had a whole week to do an assignment. They didn't even have to turn their laptop on. They could have just had a paper pencil assignment.
That's correct.
And turned in I guess I'm thinking we got kids in school for 7 hours a day. I'm thinking, in my simple mind, we may have got 2 hours worth of work. So I guess I just don't see the structure there yet that makes me feel confident that we're ready for e-learning days, because then the next step, I guess I just want to make sure we're maximizing our monies that we've already allocated.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go through the school year and think of days that aren't the most productive. The beginning of school, the end of school. We're turning our laptops in some of the buildings early, not the last day, because that doesn't work. So so the testing, I heard someone the other day make a comment that we spent the last 2 weeks testing ISTEP, and now we're immediately into NWEA. So I guess I'm just looking for every opportunity that we can to maximize every minute that we can educate our kids. And I've just not seen the structure reported to me or laid out for me in a way that I think we're getting our bang for our buck. But again, I could be in the weeds.
I would like to know when you say the perception, what examples do you have of that?
My perception. Well, like
I'm not asking about I'm asking about, do you have examples of where it hasn't, where kids haven't, a lot of the things that we're hearing is, my kid did more work on e-learning day than they did typically in the school day. Teachers are coming back to us with example after example of how things have really worked well. And it is perfectly fine, and it was a misconception that I had, that e-learning day meant that everybody had to be on a computer and online, and that's not the way it is. That's not even the state's expectation with it. So, for instance, in many of our elementaries, they did create packets, and packets weren't necessarily and weren't supposed to be worksheet driven. Does that mean that there wasn't some worksheets in there? I'm not saying that.
Right.
But there were many activities as far as even with our electives, seeing the things that they put out, and they really went above and beyond what I thought would happen. And again, that's just because that's not my comfort level. But when the teachers got a hold of it and really started to grow that and started to work with each other, I think we're getting as much as we would from adding a day at the end. I think when you look at that first day coming back from the semester and some of the activities that take place there in new classes, I think it's just like that. But the attendance, and Dr. Reynolds can speak to this a little bit better, the interaction with the kids and what they're doing with it, the teachers have been very pleased with the quality of the work that the students have submitted.
Well, and you have that advantage of seeing that I haven't seen that side, so.
One thing I'd say, Jeff, too, is I shared your train of thought on a lot of this. From looking at it kind of from where I'm sitting, it looks like a glorified homework assignment. But then you get to thinking about how many, and you've been in the classroom too, how many days that we give kids assignments or packets in class to do. And you're like, well, okay, now it's the same thing I would have done in class, but now it is a homework assignment, but it's as if you would have done it in class also. So
I think,
I've gone back and forth on the deal. I'm seeing both sides of where it's at, but I mean, I think after I realized that thought process of that it's not a glorified homework assignment, it could be potentially a unit that was done in a classroom environment.
And in all,
I'm
I'm sorry.
coming around a little bit.
And in all fairness to the e-learning process, I have 3 children that do it. I don't initiate it. I don't say, let's go get it done. They see it. They know it's an opportunity to excel and do bigger things in their classroom. They have taken the initiative, and they're in the 6th and 7th grade to do that on their own, and I have not asked them. And so I think it's the perception of the individual student, and when the teacher presents that to them. Oftentimes, I'm right here. I hear e-learning. I hear that it's coming up, but I don't oftentimes take it home and remember that. But my kids have. And that process of that e-learning is important to them enough that when I have one says, oh my gosh, I got my e-learning, I gotta go do, then I hear the other one say, oh yeah, that's right, we gotta go get that done. And I haven't initiated any of that. So I think it's the individual, how it's presented at the school, and the individual teacher that presents that information.
I'd agree
In
with
all
that.
fairness.
It's how it's directed by the teacher.
I think that the caution is that, I mean, it's assignments, homework, task, but it's not instruction. And so those are 2 days that the kids aren't getting instruction from a teacher. We can argue what instruction is, but I would just say, I mean, I'm cautious because I don't want to have us have, you know, a week snowed in and then we've done e-learning and, you know, we've had a bunch of homework or assignments, but maybe we've not had a week of instruction.
But that wouldn't have to be the case, right? Because we're already talking about flipped classrooms and some of that sort of stuff. So, teachers could theoretically do, their introductory lecture.
And I think that happens
Then,
before,
right?
like the weekend before it happens or whenever it happens. For me, this is what I've seen, that the instruction is given before they leave school. On this is what the expectations are. And the kids are hearing that, but I don't know what would happen if we were down a week. That's different. That's something we have to face when we get there.
That's
You'd have to
And there's
reconsider
been
that for
times
sure.
when it's been longer than a week.
Well, and that's a situation.
John, what I would say to that too is, think back to when we were in school. There was times we were given reading assignments for English class or whatever, and you had to read 35 or 40 pages overnight, and you'd read that, and then the next day you would have the discussion about it in class. Where the e-learning can be like that, the assignment given out, and the assignment it's not instructed, but it's their work, and then the following day in class, they can discuss what was done and things of that nature also. I mean,
I'm not against
I've
it.
gone back
I
and
just
forth all
am
around on
cautious.
this thing.
I
too,
totally
so-
get the caution.
I think that's a good way to say it. I'm not against
I
it
think
either.
these
I'm
guys
just
get it too.
cautious.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, because our next step is, why have classes? Why don't we just do a whole semester of e-learning?
It's nothing like the personal touch.
Is that the
Jeff.
next step? I
No,
mean, I mean, we
that
go
is
straight
not
from.
the next
Well, you go to a week first, and then
That's-
Throw caution to the wind.
That's a big gigantic
I mean, but we got
marathons worth
I mean,
of
we've
steps.
got pieces of that now,
Yeah.
like the online academy and some of those competing forces, so.
University of Phoenix.
But how many kids
That's a lot
just
of
get
steps.
the personal touch? There's nothing like that.
Right.
But I also like the idea of preparing them for more than just that personal one-on-one touch. Sometimes when you take classes in college, you don't ever see anybody. It's just that email that you see.
Well, I'm old enough, I saw somebody.
Well, yeah, I know.
But you would be surprised, even on residential campuses, how many online courses people are being expected to
So
take.
to prepare our students, that's another way I look at it as another way of us preparing them for something even better. Because having that online thing,
Well, and I think our teachers.
having that online thing just
University
prepares
of
them.
Phoenix, here you go.
Well,
Like I said, that's a pretty
Prepares
big
them for
giant
something
step.
more and better. That's the way I look at it.
I don't think that, I hope we never go to just strictly
Oh, goodness,
online
no.
learning, because
I
I
don't see
think
that
the
happening.
parents that came tonight
Yeah.
were a testament to how
Absolutely.
important
Absolutely.
that teacher relationship
have a
is.
calendar schedule, that
And-
question, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Dixie. So, and I guess I'll answer my own question, but since we're revising next year's calendar, we can obviously revise the following year's calendar next year.
And that was the point I was gonna make. Remember that this is the second revision of the
Absolutely.
2018-19 school year. So in the event that we have a really bad winter, we're probably gonna get guidance from the DOE anyway. When we have had really bad winters, we've missed a lot of days. And we would just, the board would need to consider, in the event that there would be a lot of snow days, that we might look at the calendar and revising that way. If we get to the point
Absolutely.
where we think we've had too many e-learning days because of weather, then
Absolutely.
we can rethink that.
And I just had one question, because I'm trying to get it straight in my mind. If you have if you're teaching and you have a unit going and all of a sudden there's a snow day, if you have the e-learning day on that day, I don't get how the progression of your unit goes. Is that like just a lesson you have on hand without it fitting in?
It's not supposed
see
to
what
be a
I'm
canned lesson or like an
Yeah.
emergency sub-lesson plan.
Yeah.
So that's why they have, the state has set up the guideline that teachers have to post by 9 a.m. And so, and that's one of the things that we talked about in discussion. And I'm telling you, there's been very few things that we sit around this table and the teachers are all in agreement that this is the way to move. And even we're bringing up concerns and they're answering our concerns. But the point of that is, with that window there, is that they would create a lesson that goes along with what they're currently teaching.
So, question on that. 2-hour delay happens, a lot of teachers hit their snooze button, okay? And then at 7:30 or 8, we decide we're canceled.
That's correct.
So it still has to be posted by 9 a.m. for all 6 classes that you teach.
And that was one of the things that I brought back to them, because when they first started talking about wanting to do it on the day of the snow day,
Which I was surprised.
I
would
was
have bet
I
they
was
would
of
have
the
gone for
opinion that
scheduled
I
days.
didn't think we were ready for that. Just me, I wasn't ready for that. I haven't been in a classroom for many years. I wasn't ready for that. Similar to testing on a smaller device than this laptop, I'm not ready for that. But our kids, that's no big deal. We have kids that write research papers on their iPhone. I don't know how you do that, but they just operate a little bit different way. So anyway, my point is, I brought up that concern, and they said we can do that. And
Well, and if
I
you
mean, it
think-
was around the discussion table who are representatives of all their buildings, and they feel like that they can do that and get it
You
done.
think about it, if they're using Canvas every day,
Yeah.
then it's
Well-
probably not that far of a jump to
But then you're
move
gonna have
that to.
You're gonna have to be careful, though, if it's a progressive lesson, because of those students that don't
That's-
have the internet
right.
access.
Right,
So it can't be too much of
yeah.
a lesson that's in progression of what you're doing, because
so
you
I
could have
think-
20% of the
yeah.
kids missing out.
I think the key with that, it maybe progressive is the wrong term, maybe supportive of what's happening right then. Maybe it's that spiraling back, maybe it's that review piece that's bringing it
So
back.
maybe like an enrichment or a
Rather-
remediation
yeah,
process.
rather than introducing new materials. But I know that we had some, even with the 3 that we had this year, who had embedded videos, and so they did get that instruction, and then they had the opportunity to email back and forth with their teachers, and so there was some of that instruction that was going on with that as well. It's a new thing, and
Yeah,
my thought with this is, next year if we get into it and it's a bad winter and we're looking at several snow, I think we revisit it and have another conversation and say, you know what, we're already at 4, we're already at 5. We need to think about what we do next.
Well, I guess I like John's word of caution. That's probably the better word to use.
I talked to 2 different teachers. One was an elementary, which she said all but, like, only 2 students had access in her particular class, elementary. Her first day, she said, ugh, I didn't feel as good, but second and third, it went great. I got some extra instruction, and it just was a completely different experience, but I had to go through the first one. And then I talked to a high school person who was just like, it was just like a seamless kind of, because they were all ready and all their people had access. So I think I'm kind of excited about it for all the reasons we just talked about, because there is so much online learning, and in the future, there is going to be a lot of that, self-directed and otherwise. So
Our legislature continues to bring up the idea of requiring an
One-
online course before students graduate now.
Yeah.
That didn't gain any traction this last time, but it was a short session.
But that's
so.
interesting to me, because, and I mean, I have at least one college student who I'd say way more than 50% of his classes were online. So,
So we understand the caution and agree
Do
with
we
that
have
caution.
a Wi-Fi map of Richmond?
I'm not sure that we do.
No, we
You mean
have,
of where Wi-Fi is located or where it's offered?
Xfinity has hotspots all over.
oh, I see what you're saying.
That,
Right, if you're a Xfinity customer and you are if you share that, then you have the ability to share or to get access from other people too. But we share documents on our website. High school put together some areas that have free Wi-Fi, or if you buy a drink or something, a soda or something, you'll get Wi-Fi access at a restaurant and so forth. So, but any more you know of, please share them. That way kids can.
locating the buses in some high-density places.
There have been some places that have done
There's some
that.
places that have done that. We don't have Wi-Fi on the bus to do that, so, but some have
Know
done
what that
that.
might, I mean, can we see what that might cost?
We have looked at that, so, costs, so, but,
And I know, I've seen kids outside of schools. They're sitting on the porch doing their homework, getting the Wi-Fi off of school. I've seen that. I know that's what they're doing, so I think that's awesome too. And so, well, that's another possibility too, is
Park in front of
opening up
AT&T.
labs and things, so.
And John, in the frequently asked questions, we included some popular sites in town that were, north side, east side, downtown, west, just a list of different things.
I
So we can
recall the map,
continue. Yeah, we can continue to make sure that we advertise that information.
But on a snow day, you're not going to encourage them to go out to a free hotspot.
Right.
That's
walk to
right.
school, but
That might
walk
be
to McDonald's.
interesting. That might be interesting. Good point.
Only if
Someone would
it's
be more likely
only
to
if
do
it's,
it.
Yeah, it's true.
Although they do always end up sledding, I've noticed. Kids always end up sledding, so that's funny.
Put Wi-Fi
Okay,
on
I think-
Whitwater Hill.
That's, I don't think we voted, right?
No.
Okay. So all those in favor of approving the calendar changes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Okay, our last action
That was a
item.
good conversation.
Yes, it was a very good conversation. Our last action item this evening is 4.03, and that is the Student Code of Conduct. And I'm going to ask Dr. Reynolds if he would speak to us, please.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Terrell. I bring for you this evening approval for the 2018-19 Student Code of Conduct. You'll find a list of changes in the board memo. The rest of it's unchanged, just the highlighted highlighted sections. Again, created with collaboration with a committee, and then we take it to full teacher discussion. Lots of good conversation this year, really trying to address concerns in the building and really clean up some grammatical things too. With one of our special members really helped us out with that, so I appreciate that. So
Not
I
me.
ask for your approval this evening for the 18-19 Student Code of Conduct.
All those in favor of approving the changes signify by saying aye. Oops,
Yeah.
sorry.
Motion.
How about I
I
put
got ahead of
How about I
myself.
put a motion on the table
Let's
first?
put a motion on the
Straight to
table.
motion.
I
I
went
mean, to vote.
straight to vote. First, I almost missed a vote, now I'm gonna vote early. Do I have a motion to accept the uniform?
I'll put the motion on the table.
Thank you.
for
I'll second that.
Thank you. They're bailing me out. Now, any comments or questions?
The only comment
Yes.
I have is as much grief as I give you guys for being old and all the old jokes, we're removing, what was it, paging device.
Pagers.
So now I'm officially feeling the,
No one even knows what they are.
just
The
so
kids
you
don't
know,
even
I'm
what those are.
officially feeling it, all
Device,
right?
What?
So I'm throwing that
That's
out there.
hilarious.
And I do have a question. There's a lot of, and I've been talking to him a lot about this just now. I don't see bullying. I see it scattered. But when you look at the original one, the 46.03, it states its own section regarding bullying. We've been having a lot. Let me back that out. There seems to be, I just would like to see something more about that section. I don't feel like parents should have to hunt pieces of it down, and that's the way it looks in this new revision, that in order to find it, you've really got to look. Whereas in the original piece, it's under its own section, and I can tell you what that is. It is under its own section. There's section B in 403 under bullying, and it outlines everything there. I understand that it's in pieces of it throughout the new change, and a lot of it's still there, but you've got to really dig for it. Not dig for it. I don't have to dig for it because he brought it to me. So, but if I was a parent looking at that, I'd have to really go over that again and look at it. There's not really, when you look underneath the old stuff, it talks about bullying. That's been a lot of conversation here lately I've had to experience. Thank God I don't have to do that anymore. But I'm just real concerned that it looks like it's hidden. But that's just my impression. That's what I think.
Yeah, the policy, you know, we have a school board policy that addresses bullying, and it's its own 4603 section, part of, you know, and that was pulled over into the student code of conduct, but a lot of those policies come right over into the code of conduct. So bullying, it's mentioned a couple times, and it talks about bullying under
Hazing.
Hazing and grounds for suspension and expulsion. Bullet 19 is the specific bullying, but it's bullet 19, I think, is your
Yes,
concern.
but it
that it's
refers
pulled
to the
over.
Indiana Code of Conduct bullying. So as a parent, if I don't, I'm looking at that, and I'm saying, is that what the School of Code of Conduct is saying? Is that what Richmond School is saying? Is Richmond School repeating what Indiana law says to do, or is that what Richmond's policy is?
This is.
I know.
Okay. I thought you're just. Yeah.
I get that it's both. It's telling us where to find it in the state,
Yeah.
and then underneath it is ours. If I'm a parent looking at that, I may not think that.
Yep.
I don't
Well,
know.
and the other thing, the kids don't read the policies, but they do read the student code of conduct.
And there's nothing in
If they
there
have a
about
question
bullying.
about something.
There's nothing in there that specifically targets bullying. It talks
It
about
has
hazing
to.
and harassment, and then later down the way you see bullying, but just only mentioned like one time, maybe twice. I don't know. I just felt like that
Needs a
should be
little more
addressed.
Emphasis.
And you know, we
pretty
those first
self-explanatory.
school days, they dedicate to going over classroom procedures, but one of the things that we require them to cover is bullying.
Okay.
But A through G, I understand.
Any other comments or questions regarding that?
I mean, I'll just remain consistent and
45,
propose
17,
based on the
18
personal
harassment.
search
It doesn't talk about bullying.
issue.
Okay.
What did he say?
Anyone, any other comments? All those in favor of approving the Uniform Code of Student Conduct signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we need to poll? Or are we good?
No, I've got to.
Okay. Okay.
John, I missed your comment there right before we voted. What did you say?
And I've been opposed to the personal search adjustments.
Right,
so
okay, thank you.
Just, I haven't really changed on that.
To our work session topic.
Okay, a work session topic is really just checking with you guys. What's come up is we really need to have Belvia Gray from Umball and Jane Herndon in from Ice Miller. We had Jane here. She did a very 30,000-foot kind of view of financing and options and different things. And now that we're to this point of moving forward with it, with the whole process, whatever that may end up being, we really need to get more in depth with that information. And so in talking with Belvia Gray, who will help us with that as well, one of the things that they suggested is that we have a retreat where we can really get into it and talk more specifically, ask questions that's not really in the public meeting, so that we're not inhibited or maybe think that we should know the answer and not ask, and then we don't really end up finding what it is. So when through conversations with Jane, when she mentioned that, I started looking at the calendar and thought, well, we're in this time of year where it's so cramped with trying to fit everything in. So I thought, what if we just used our meeting date that we already have, contacted Ron to see how we could make that work, and his recommendation was that we keep it as a open general meeting, just in case there's some action item that we need to bring at that time. But our goal will be that meeting is 10 minutes or whatever it may be, and then go into an executive session where both Jane and Belvia could help train with this. But the other part of that, we've talked for a year, maybe two, about doing a budget workshop, a budget, to work through, and Karen really liked that idea of being able to do that with this piece in mind because of some of the things that are coming up that can be just included right in that budget process and creating that. So,
so we'll be able to go over how they're going to do the educational fund and the operational fund and how that's
the
really
impact
a
of
training.
all of that with what we're coming into.
Because I'm going to actually send a letter or a note to ISBA because I was disappointed that the online webinar, they wanted to charge $35 for us to view that. And I wasn't going to pay $35 because I thought our membership should have covered that. But it was over the operational fund, and
It would be a training session for us, basically, which we have all wanted.
But Jeff, if you want to do that, just let Kim know and we'll get you guys signed up.
well, but the whole point of it
understand
is
your frustration
No one
with
should
that.
pay for it, is
we
what you
pay
said.
for a membership in the ISBA. The administrators get more benefit out of it than we do.
Yeah.
So
We have
it
to
should
pay.
become called the Administrators Association and then let the
That's a
board
different
members
one.
attend
Yeah, that's a
as
different one.
guests.
We pay for that one too.
Because I think this one is really a threefold. I think it's IASBO is a part of it, ISBA is a part of it, and IAPSS.
But I think it's really important, I like the fact that you're gonna do that, because I think it's really important that we understand the change of the funds.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, are the laws developed enough now to know the difference between what you
Well,
can do within those funds?
Karen's there right now, and once we're done this evening, I'll be heading down for 2 days of it, and so we think that we'll have a pretty good idea once we come out of that. So the answer is I think so.
And
I'm
then
not-
those two
I'm not-
also.
Yeah, I don't know that I can say definitely yes, but I believe so.
We have wanted to do this, so I think it's a really great idea, and I love the idea of using the meeting that's on the books already, just because it is such a tight, we're so tight right now, it's for time, but, obviously take the comments from you all,
Is the timeline only the finance piece of it?
is that what you're
Is
meaning
that the
for-
goal of the, I mean, is that our professional development? I mean,
No, it's not the only piece of it, no. I'm trying to figure out how to say it because so much of it fits within the timeline, all the different pieces and like listing of projects and grouping of projects and bringing that back to the board for their final decision of this is what we want to do with the money that we need to be committed to for next year before our tax rate could be impacted.
well, that's part of the questions, the reason why I was asking the question, because, I think, we've talked about possibly entertaining a board finance committee or a board construction committee or.
And I talked with her about that as well, and she's got some, both of them have some really good thoughts on that and what that can look like. Obviously, it's what they do.
Because, I mean, there's just a whole myriad of things that.
And I would encourage you guys too, if you have specific things that you want to see covered or addressed in that, let us know. They're both flexible and want to do whatever they can to help us through it and provide the information. So anything that you guys think of.
But I just wanted to make sure it was aligning with your goals. I mean, what did you?
I want it to be whatever we need it to be. That's the whole point of having them come in and do it. Ron?
Well, I think I want to emphasize the preamble that Todd said, and that is this is kind of a view from 30,000 feet. And I think in the interest of transparency, when you start, really focusing down on specific types of projects or impacted schools, I think that's a matter of a public discussion. But this is more general than that, and I think, and it's totally appropriate.
I don't see us talking about individual projects.
Yeah, I think that's fine, but so I think, I really strongly believe that if, and that's an if, because it's your decision, if you get to the point where you decide to issue debt for any project, the people that are going to sell that are you folks, and you got to have a comfort level with it. You got to have an understanding of it, and B, a total comfort level. Do you have to all be in agreement? Not necessarily, but I think the areas of disagreement should be really vetted and talked about and hopefully narrowed, if not eliminated. But this is the view from 30,000 feet, and otherwise it would be inappropriate for executive session. I have no reservations whatsoever that this is appropriate the way it's been explained to me and the way I think.
Understanding the options, I think, is really our big thing, is instruction more than anything.
So are we okay with proceeding with that?
I think it's a good use of our time.
Okay, we'll proceed that way then.
Well, before, this is really not along with the work session as far as the timeline, but I think this would also, I'd like to throw a couple questions out because it goes along with the master planning and our processes and how we move forward. And I've done a lot of thinking since our last board meeting. Some of the concerns that I had at the time that we voted on the boundary changes still exist. But I guess I'm more want to talk about how we can work our processes and what process that we're going to go through, and because one of the emails that you had sent back to us, and this is not meant to be anything bad, I just want to talk about how we can improve it for the next time. But one of the questions that one of the emails that you sent back, and this is nothing top secret, it just said that you made minor changes and that it does not need to return to the board for approval, talking about the boundaries, because actual maps were not approved at the board meeting. The adjustment of the boundaries was what was approved. So I guess I just want to make sure as we move forward that I clearly understand the processes, because I thought the boundaries were approved with minor changes, knowing that so as I'm looking at the data on whether I want to vote for or against that recommendation, the boundary map was 100% part of my thought process. Okay. So as a board member sitting here saying, well, that's not what we approved. Well, that's completely different than we vote to make all schools 85%, which is essentially what I got from this response. So I guess I just want to make sure that I have clarity, and we have clarity as we go through the next 3 to 5 years of especially the next 3 years. Yeah. Make sure that I have clarity on what we are approving, what data that we're looking at that is applicable, because and I know there was some concern about maps being released early, and I just need to make sure that we're very clear on what we're talking and what we're discussing, because I thought those boundaries were final, with the exception of maybe a left side or a right side. And within the last 2 weeks, I'm guessing, well, I heard about 2 adjustments being made. I don't know how many other adjustments were made, but that goes to us being thinking forward enough to be out into the public, to have a chance for discussion, and have more of a final product presented and voted on. Because if we start getting to the point that the board is voting generally on a process, that's a whole lot different than a final process. Because I didn't feel like it was ready for a vote, which I explained my reasons why. And over what I've heard for the last 2 weeks, my position, I feel like, has been strengthened because, you know, as of late as a couple of days ago, we just made another change that affected, 48 families. So, and there's data that I think as board, we catch, I mean, often we're the bad guys because it's hard to get stuff through us without asking questions, and, and often I hear people say, well, we hire you guys to run the district and da-da-da, and it's not our job to do that. We have one employee. But you know what? Every single time we hear a comment, the board did this and the board did that. And so on one side, we're responsible. On the other side, we're not. So I just want to make sure that the processes that we had in place 2 weeks ago, I'd like to see them not happen again. I think we need to have time for communication input out into the public. I think we need to have time to have, we didn't have enough time to have this plan detailed. At least detailed to the point that where we knew for sure the line was going to be on the boundary adjustment. And you catch people off guard, it gets emotions up. You're never going to make everybody happy, I understand that, but I also think there's questions like that I don't know that I'd like to know the answer to. How many families did you guys send letters to that we affected? Did we affect 100 families or 1,000 families? So there's just the process. I just want to make sure that we have clarity on what the board is approving, and if it's a general, I'm still unclear. Did we approve adjusting the boundaries to have 85% capacity in every building? Or did we just say, yeah, adjust the boundaries and just come back and give us the report at the end of where you're at? So what am I responsible for here? What is your decision and what is our approval? Because we didn't adjust the buildings to all 85%. Now we're still within a range, 81 to 88, I think. And I'm not taking anything away from the process, because the recap that you sent us today, I thought was very positive information. I just want to make sure that we're clear, that we think ahead in the future, we give people the time in the community to react, and we know what we're doing. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, and I think too that we talked about it here, and we know why we had to make the adjustments. But I don't think we made it clear enough to our parents why we had to make the adjustments. I think they kind of get it, but they don't really get it, about art classes on stage and music having to stop or art having to stop because music came in, all that kind of
Barely
thing.
getting through the lunches because too many.
That if there's any way that we could list the reasons why that we had to make the changes.
Hopefully that'll get woven, and the question will get asked and it'll get woven into articles and stories instead of just, that people are upset.
And typically, if your kids are not affected, then you understand it. But if your kids do get affected, then you dive into it more, and then you start seeing all the little details. And that's where I agree with, the public needs some time to digest stuff too.
It's very difficult too for a parent who's doing their job, which their job is about their child.
Correct.
And our job is all children, and so that helping people make that adjustment's tough, because they're absolutely doing their job.
Fault anybody who talked tonight, because
No,
they're one of
absolutely
the
not.
kids'
I thought they
best
did
interests
great.
at foot. I mean, that's a wonderful thing. I wish every parent was like that.
Parents are willing to have a 10-15 lunch for an exceptional educational experience, or willing to put up with art or music, maybe not ideal as we would like, for the experience that they are receiving. I mean, I think they see the trade-offs, and
Yeah, and
I
then
mean,
us
in any
sitting
case, they're
here, we
happy.
know those experiences are wonderful at all the schools. And so for us, it's a little difficult, it's difficult for me to say one's better than the other, because I know that there's amazing experiences at all schools. So I struggle with that as well. So. Okay. We are at our board reports and old business. And I know we have an executive session, so let's make this very quick. But since we did make a trip to the some of us made a trip to the National School Board Association, I wanted to give us an opportunity to just briefly sort of summarize the kinds of topics that we went to, and then maybe a couple of takeaways that we can use going forward. Dixie, would you like to start?
I have too many notes.
You have a lot of notes, so I thought you'd be a good one
And
to start.
I lost my envelope, but
Oh, no.
that I
Oh,
wrote
no.
on. But anyway, a couple of things that I did want to say, because I was in ones about creating spaces and flexible spacing in classrooms and things like that, which I think is very important. And they said that we need to use technology for creation instead of consumption.
Oh, nice.
And they also said that currently, right now, our kids have the worst technology that they're ever going to have. So
That's really a good point.
that was, I thought
Bring
that
back
was.
the pagers.
Changing devices.
So, and that in classrooms every day should start with story. Either teachers or students share with class what's going on. It helps build relationships.
Oh,
and,
that's a good one.
it's really vitally important. Creates that home atmosphere for a lot of our kids. And then that brings me to the one that really touched me the most, and that was foster children in our school system. Because these kids have multiple adverse childhood experiences. They're separated from siblings. Sometimes they're moved from place to place, trauma after trauma. 90% are poor and on free and reduced lunch. Some kids are dying in foster care. And it said that school boards should have a conversation about their foster children and what's going on in their lives, and things like, why does the juvenile court and counseling occur during the school day? Why aren't we doing more coordination with each other? There was a man in the audience, and this is just stuck in my head. He adopted an 11-year-old boy who had been in 250 placements between the ages of 6 to 11.
Oh, my goodness.
250.
We can
So
develop the trust there, wouldn't it?
they said it is critical for our foster kids to stay in the same school, regardless of what we have to do to make that happen.
And we do, every day.
Yeah.
So, I can
That
tell you
was
that.
one of the things. And then I also went to some safety things. And it asked on school forms, do we have a place for relationship with an adult instead of mom and dad? Because not all of our kids have moms and dads. And so forth. So there were a lot of safety sessions because of the
Equity.
the school shootings and so forth. And most of the things that I gleaned from the conference on the flexible spacing and some of the things that we're doing here we seem to be right on track with what they were suggesting in the sessions I attended.
How about you, Jeff?
I'll go last. Because I got something else I can bleed right into.
Oh, good Lord.
I'm scared now.
Me too.
How about you, Debbie?
I'm scared. I'm scared too. I went to a lot of them. I too went to the end of that one that she went to. I went to it just to see what was going to be said about foster kids in the school system. And that is a difficult place to be as a foster parent of 23 years, having over, 50, 60 kids in my home at one time, going back home and then coming back into the system, being an adoptive parent of 6 children, and now raising my grandchildren. So I get not being able to be in a stable, safe environment and to be able to stay put. I have a foster daughter right now that she goes to dentist. This is the first time she's ever excelled. And something just clicked this year. Something dentist has given her has just clicked. She has been invited to early college. She's in the 7th grade. She has been invited to a conference in Las Vegas to go to Teen Leadership by Choice Center Foundation. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what these teachers did at dentists. I don't know but something clicked. And that goes back to being a foster child in our school system and having the stability of being able to be in one place, in one location, and not being changed. That's real critical. The other thing I went to fun things. I went to something called Teaching Music as a Diversity. They did more things. It reminded me of the high school kids when they were patting themselves and playing with these little things, these sticks and stuff, and making music with their hands. You guys have seen that, right? Mm-hmm. It is so awesome. And I went to that and actually tried to coordinate my hands and feet to do that. It's really hard. Could be my age, but it's really hard. But I found those kind of things to be really exciting. And I also went to another training. It's called the Adverse Childhood Experience. And it that piggybanked a little bit on the foster kid, but it also talked about kids being in so many different in the same school system, but being moved from one place to another because of of where their parents moved them to. And the effects of their development and how they grow and what they do affects their learning and affects them to be able to thrive in the school to the best of their ability. So this training for me was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome for me because I got to get to know board members I didn't know. And I didn't know how important that was for me to know Jeff. I didn't know.
Sorry.
I didn't know how important it was for me to get to know Dixie and Todd and Suzanne. Those things are important as a board member to get to know who you work with, and it's important because it's empowering. It's an empowering feeling to get to know them on a different level, and I enjoyed that part of it, but more so meeting other people who are board members like us, discussing things that they go through. But the workshops and the trainings and the things that they offered was amazing. It was I enjoyed it.
Especially Terry Bradshaw.
Oh, gosh, he's a hoot. I don't even know why he's there, but he was okay. But I tell you what, I like that lady. I forget her name. Ann Compton.
Is that right?
Ann Compton was pretty cool.
Is he funny?
I like what Ann Compton had to say. Terry Bradshaw just made us all laugh.
He was Jeff's favorite.
I like football.
How about you, Todd?
I went to several different ones, like all of you tried to kind of spread it around, but one of the big ones that really stuck out to me was a district in Kentucky that's very similar to us as far as size and demographics and some of the unique ways that they are reaching out. When we were talking earlier about buses with Wi-Fi, they have a summer feeding program like we do, but then they also included a way for there to be activities and different things for the kids, whether it was PE or art or music or some other things that went along with that. But then also had Wi-Fi on their buses so that when the food truck was there was a bus there that was able to go in and register and do all kinds of things and really help them there. But then they also had some really creative things to look at, early childhood development, preschool, how do we reach more kids with the limited resources that we currently have. Went to some on board superintendent relationship, obviously, which is important. Board governance, Another one that I went to was on the digital age. I think that was kind of a theme that was going throughout the conference, and really looking at it. And the thing that I really walked away from that was there was 4 different districts that were represented from all over the country, was that we are there.
Right, that's what I got too.
And I think I mentioned that to some of you because I went to it right before we went into one of the general sessions. And it was, if nothing else, it was the affirmation that we could have been there. You know, every time somebody got up and started talking about something, I thought of a group from the high school, or a group from Test, or a group from our next gen cadre that could have got up there and presented on that. So it was good. I agree, Debbie, getting to know, spend time with each other on a different level is very important as well.
I sort of typically gravitate toward community engagement, marketing, communication. I also went to some of the board leadership and best practices sessions as well. A couple of things that, there was one group that was doing some very interesting things with a student group, and they sort of talked about the differences between maybe having board representation, student representation on the board versus this separate group that was kind of a leadership group that actually took on projects, which I thought was kind of an interesting change from what we've typically heard is we get the input, where this group was actually charged with projects by the superintendent or the administration, where, hey, we need to work on this issue with the school, and the students actually drove the project, which I thought was very interesting.
Given resources?
Yes, they were. They were given resources. They were given actually timelines and money and topics, and yeah, it was there was a specificity to it, which we had never really seen that in other examples. It was always like, oh yeah, we'll have a representative on the board, and they can't vote or can vote, or talk a lot about that, but not really an actual active group, which this group really was. And then also sort of the other one was very much about boards and sort of that servant leadership sort of process, and all the importance in best practices of the retreat. So the sort of ground setting, as you were talking about, Jeff, that sort of our mode of operation, that how important it is that sort of gets set at the beginning of the school year, and that's where that retreat, that's where that happens or should happen, and sort of set the ground rules. Ground rules, that's not a really good,
Set the stage.
but sort of to set the,
Foundation?
yeah, and the operation, the modes of operation. So this is how we approach this, and when this happens, if we need to communicate something out from the board, this is how it's done. If there needs, if we want to add something to the agenda, and just sort of setting all of that structure ahead of time, and they talk about how that is the best time to do that, and then obviously sort of a systemic communication, the need for that sort of system of communication. So I'm trying to sort of white paper that out to share out with you guys, because I found that, I felt like that was something we could really benefit from. So that's what I have to share.
Disappointed that you didn't go to why the propane school buses make sense
I
for your
did
fleet.
not go to that one. I thought if anyone was going to, it would be you.
Did you go?
I did go.
I thought you
She
might.
should have said, I walked in and saw you there.
No, I actually thought, I wonder if I bet Jeff's gonna go to propane school buses, but I have done some research on propane school buses, so I chose not to go to that one.
It's actually pretty
Was
interesting.
that sponsored by Hank Hill, or was it,
Thomas.
Which is who we
But
get our buses from.
I think one of the things that, and we probably didn't do a good enough job talking to the new school board members that didn't get to go. One of the things that I find the National School Board Association, to me, is the source for professional development for the board.
Absolutely.
I've been highly disappointed in our state association.
Not
To the
as
point,
strong.
to the point that I don't even attend those sessions at all hardly anymore. The state association really does not, in my opinion, support school board members. not at the level that we need to be supported. I think the National School Board does a great job of that, and I've been on the board long enough that I've not been to the conference every year, but probably pretty close to most of the years. And what's nice about it is it's such a deep, there's such depth there that I generally go to the sessions that align with where we are as a district at the
Absolutely.
time.
And there, you
So-
can always find them.
And you can always find them. I mean, last year did almost 90% probably technology. Data, and I did the same thing this year. I mean, I attended 16 sessions, and out of those 16 sessions, over 50% of them had to do with bonding, referendums, construction. And what's nice about that is although you can't take everything away from those sessions and apply it here because it's different states,
States are
different
different.
rules, but a lot of the processes are the same. A lot of the, how you begin and how you end. Now I did go to the propane. That was a good session. Actually, it was.
We
actually
chatted
was
about that briefly.
It actually was very interesting. But I guess that's the most that I'm going to, that's probably about all I'm going to say on it. I really don't need to bore you with the details on it. But it's a great segue into my other.
Oh, Lord. Here we go.
This is where now you're worried, aren't you?
Yes.
No, actually, I'm
Was
moving
this on the
It's a
agenda?
K
I'm moving on to
through 12
another
building
topic.
Was this
with-
on the
It's
agenda?
going to be entirely interactive.
Skip across.
It's other board business.
Oh, okay.
We actually
Board
had
reports.
we actually had our first redevelopment commission meeting
Oh, look
of
at
this
you.
year yesterday. So we
And
had
how long have you been officially?
the first one of the year. We haven't met since December.
I was gonna say, how long have you officially been on there?
So anyway, all I did was I gave you copies of the cash flow statement. Real brief. You can look at it at your own time. I'm still trying to understand it because, as you know, I'm fairly new to the committee, so there's still some. I'm still trying to understand the process they use to go through to pick out
Right.
their projects. We entered the meeting with available TIF funds of $2.227 million. And then we approved $670,000 of expenditure, so now we have a balance of 1.56 almost million that's left of available TIF funds. But what's interesting about it is, we approved $290,000. I should say we approve. I'm not a voting member.
Right.
So I sit up there, and you want to talk about an odd situation? You sit up there, motion, second, vote, and you're just, I'm quiet. Can you guys imagine me quiet?
No.
You're allowed to comment. You're allowed to comment.
Well, I
allowed to
do.
comment,
I
I
do.
would
They
say,
look at
but
me
you
like you
better.
guys do.
So we're not abnormal. That's what you're saying.
But, one of the three projects that got approved, actually, the questions on the fourth project because of my questions, got delayed, but.
So they do know you.
They do know that. No, but,
No, I think that's
we
great.
approved $290,000 in TIF funds for sidewalks.
Wow.
For what?
For sidewalks. And then we approved two paving projects, one on Williamsburg Pike and one on Northwest 11th Street. So as a member, and this is probably, I'm asking for you guys' help, especially administration's help, because the reason the school board has an appointed position for that board is these are tax dollars that are being redirected, that are being taken away from the schools.
Right.
So of course, I haven't had enough meetings, and I haven't quite figured out my role there yet, but as we take a look at, they get a little over $2 million a year in TIF funds. So the questions that I have, right? Or is that right?
No. They have available to them over $2 million a year. What I think the purpose of that advisory member, from the school corporations in particular, was, and there was some talk, as you may be aware, this last session of making that a voting position. Didn't make it through, but it's still, I think it'll come back. But I think as the advisory member, your challenge is to make that redevelopment commission articulate reasons why it chooses to capture all of the AV if it so chooses, and I will tell you, Richmond always does. We don't at the county. With our deal with Sugar Creek, we agreed that when we supported their bonds, we would make sure that 10% was passed through at least to the underlying entities, and eventually that'll even increase when the bonds go off. So I think, I think there needs to be an articulation of why you need 100% of the AV for what purposes.
Well, no.
Not, let's put it in the bank and then decide as we go later how we're going to spend it.
So you're correct, so that's why you said because I'm looking at to get $1,056,000 access to that every 6 months. So if some of those funds would flow through to the lower interest, it would be less money.
And annually, they have to meet before June 15th, I think it is, don't hold me on that, to decide how much AV they will allow to pass through to the overlapping entities, and then they have to send a letter to each of the physical bodies of those overlapping taxing units, advising them of their findings.
So the coordination, I've got a lot to learn, so I want to ask some questions. I kind of want to make sure that I represent the role. After the meeting yesterday, I went up to the board president and I said, because like I said, I'm still trying to fill my role out, so I need help here.
Of course.
But we voted on these projects, and part of me as a citizen think, okay, we have these projects that we could spend TIF money on. Well, TIF money is, I always thought this is to help the economic development of the city. So then I'd have to ask questions to myself like, does that sidewalk qualify? Does the Northwest 11th Street qualify? But then again, is that my role, or is my role to advocate something different? Or both?
I think your role is to obtain an understanding of what's going on and then report back to the board, and if there's not unanimity or satisfaction at the board level, then you are the advocate for whatever position the board would like to see taken that may be different than that.
So I am reporting back. You have the 2 cash flow statements. You can see the money's there. I could try to answer questions. I'm probably not able to answer too many, but I can go get the answer.
If you would mind.
Well, and we talked.
There's an extra copy because Aaron's not here.
I can get one later.
We talked before at one point too, when we tried to get some TIF money to help in the technology, in the purchase of technology, because indirectly it does help economic development.
Well, there's also a certified park, or technology.
Tech park money.
Tech park money, that's the second cash flow, so I think that's what we were trying to get the last time, weren't we?
What's that, Rob? I think we only have one school in the certified tech park, Crestdale.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Because it's IU East isn't.
Right, that's how IU East got some funding last year through the redevelopment commission for upgrading their
The other
hardware.
thing, I think you nailed it, Jeff, which is get some understanding of how those projects are vetted, like what's the criteria?
Now, I will.
How those are chosen.
I
mean,
did.
I think that's the question.
And I did, Mayor Snow spoke at the beginning in support of these projects, and he drafted a vision of Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, and he called these Tier 2 products, so I'm going to actually send him an email because I'd like to have a copy of what he said.
Yeah.
But, again, when Karen's back and
They don't like it when she comes in.
but you got me there, so I can ask questions. I mean, after the meeting.
Well, I think it's just because she's so knowledgeable on the subject, and she asks some really probing questions.
Well, it's a lot to understand.
It is.
Sure.
I mean, and being exposed to it. I mean, the first meeting that I attended last year, I was there the whole meeting. They didn't even know who it was.
Well, and I think we still need to keep pressure on legislators for that school board representative to have a vote. I really do. I mean, what's the point in going to a meeting or being a part of a group and not being allowed?
It really is almost a wasted appointment. I sat there and really felt useless, other than asking questions from a taxpayer or but if we can approve sidewalks down on 7th Street and North 8th Street, and that means that we've
Somehow in support of economic development.
It supported economic development, so how does that
We should be
align
able
with?
to-
Wi-Fi. how does that align with some of our
Exactly.
school projects? And
I like that idea.
The Wi-Fi is a great idea.
so maybe that Wi-Fi across the city for educational purposes is something that we approach TIF. I don't know. And I'm not trying to cause trouble between us and the government,
Well,
city
no,
government.
When
But
you
I'm
talk
also
about
trying to.
economic development and supportive education, that kind of an idea is way more
So
broad
that's-
thinking than a sidewalk on a corner. On
So that's why I
7th or
introduced
whatever.
this and it was, like I said, the meeting just happened yesterday, so I didn't put it on the agenda last week. But anyway, that's my report.
Is this the same group that put, signed Richmond over the trestle that's coming down now?
I'm sorry?
No, that was a grant through Innovation Center.
Oh, okay.
They're taking
They-
it
they did-
down?
They
No,
canceled
it's
previous
coming
grants, right?
apart.
Yes.
They had them scheduled, but they
They
canceled.
canceled the previous
Coming
meeting.
apart,
Right,
pieces
so-
that was falling.
Oh, goodness.
I just wonder if it's
Okay,
the same.
so I appreciate that, guys. I really do. I know Aaron would have had a report ready too. He is participating in a funeral of a fellow officer, so he could not be here.
He did an excellent job at one of the safety sessions.
Took it over.
Yes, he did. It was really good.
Oh, that surprises me.
That's awesome. At the NSBA.
He's passionate about school safety.
Yes, he is. Okay, so let's preview upcoming meetings and events, because there's a
Okay,
lot
so
of
there's a
them.
lot of events coming, and you'll see those in your last board update, and you'll continue to get emails about those. You have one at your your desk tonight about the STAR block party. This weekend is really busy on campus here at the high school, and it doesn't involve us per se, but Ivy Tech's graduation is Saturday. IU East is actually Friday. They have a quick turnaround, and our people do an amazing job hosting them, and they appreciate that, and I hear from them continuously about how grateful they are for that opportunity. A really cool event that's taking place on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week is Shine Visit. Shine it stands for something, and I don't have that right in front of me, but over a year ago I was approached to be a part of a group that included Chad Bolser, Steve Borchers, Jamie Lopeman, and Bruce Daggy of Boys and Girls Club joined us after a couple of months. But Shine is a program that's currently taking place in a particular city in Pennsylvania. And what it is, it's an after-school STEM program. And they'd really like to bring something like that here to Richmond. So that's when we started meeting about it. That group has kind of morphed into this group that's currently active with it. Steve Borchers is really supporting it from the foundation as well. And they're coming into, the lady who started this program and is running it in Pennsylvania is going to spend 2.5 days here in Richmond. So we're going to be involved taking them on a tour of our schools. I'm actually committed with some other things, so Chuck and Bridget will be taking them around. And then we're having a meeting with the superintendents of Wayne County and the Shine group that has been with this individual who's coming into town. So it really looks like a great opportunity, another partnership that maybe would be housed possibly at Ivy Tech using the lab spaces that they have. It could really be a great outreach for our kids. So that's a really cool opportunity that's coming up. And then just as you start to plan out, 2 weeks from now is when we start to really have some more of the end of the year activities as far as celebrations and different things. So just pay attention, and again, as you can, plan to attend. I know it really means a lot to our students, our teachers, and our administrators as well.
I'm assuming
Yes.
So, we do have an executive session immediately following. I don't think it'll be a long one, but I want to remind you of that.
Press conference?
And, yeah, we do have a press conference. Sorry, I missed that. Do we have
Gentlemen?
any questions from you gentlemen, or have you already gotten all your questions answered? Okay. All right, so we have our bell ringer.
Bell ringer. Yesterday, Celebrate Excellence. Amazing as it is every year. It's just great to see all of our teachers there and celebrate them, and then the Friends of Education, to see the partnerships that are active in our buildings and the impact that they have on our kids. Want to thank Jennifer and Phyllis. Phyllis gave me the dirtiest look I've gotten from her since last Celebrate Excellence when I called her out for all of her hard work. And if you guys know Phyllis, you know that she likes to work behind the scenes, and she does an amazing job. But that really, Jennifer and Phyllis do a great job with that every year. So that's our Celebrate Excellence, and we appreciate their work as well as all the people who were recognized yesterday.
And the lineup was really amazing, guys. So it was a lot of fun, and you should read up on these people. So, all right, we are adjourned.
Got you.